really just think it's about living and breathing. I mean, it's not set it and forget it mode. It's about having living and breathing thoughts around the way you want to make a change. As simple as I want to inspire the people that report into me, or I have a massive project and I have to make this work. It's about being nimble enough to roll with the punches and say, you know, what I did a year ago doesn't work anymore, and I have to be forward thinking enough to change it now. Facts and circumstances change, and so should we. So I think about transformational thinking a little literally, but also just soft skill wise. Again, I bring it back to, you can be the smartest person that went to like the best schools, has the pedigree and the credentials, but if you can't pivot from your perspective, if you can't listen to others speak, if you can't incorporate the way the world is changing around you, you can't be transformational.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation.
Hey Warriors, it's Jeannie. It's time to talk about transformation. Transformation, I think, is the key to so many new ways of being personally, professionally, structurally, organizationally, functionally. And so I've been really reflecting on who are those people that I'd like to bring forward into conversation, and how can I provide an opportunity for them to impart wisdom to the incredible followers of this conversation, Warriors at Work. And someone came to mind just based upon her reputation, her energy, her intelligence, her unflappability in terms of managing difficult, high-stakes stress situations. But more than anything, she has tremendous heart, likability, and incredible stories. Her personal journey was something that I wanted to bring forward. So I'm thrilled to bring to you a conversation with Nargis Hilal, who is the Director and Chief Compliance Officer and Counsel at Lazard Asset Management. So you're going to hear a little bit about her story, why transformation is so key to her leadership approach, but not just in work. It's who she is as a human being. And I was delighted to sit down with her and have this conversation. I hope you find it inspiring and invigorating to what your leadership brand is and or could be more of. Enjoy. Nargis Hilal is in the Warriors at Work house, and I can't wait to get into this conversation about transformation with someone who's living and breathing it every day. You know, it's so interesting when I think about you and your journey. Like, do you have moments where you're like, I can't believe I'm about to have an interview on a platform talking about transformation? When you think about the arc, your whole trajectory, like what comes up for you when I say, okay, yes, you're tagged with the word transformation?
Yeah, it like gives me a lump in my throat, because this is what I've always wanted. I never thought, sort of growing up, I would have the opportunity to be sitting here in my office in 30 Rock as a chief compliance officer, talking to somebody about why I think the way I think, why I do things the way I do, how I inspire my team. And I feel really honored, but I take all of that back to sort of like the way I grew up. I grew up, you know, very tough parents, very high expectations. I wanted to move to New York and make them proud. But I grew up in a small town that was very much salt of the earth, you know, very low income, very hardworking blue collar. All I wanted to do was sort of capture what I could from the sort of, like I said, salt of the earth, very natural, kind people in that town, but deliver on being what I know my parents sort of expected of me, as like a bigger, badder, stronger attorney that could live on her own and make them proud. They grew up, outside of the United States in Pakistan, and this is all they've ever wanted. So I have this like perfect blend of growing up in a small town where you sort of care about humanity and want to give back to your community, and everybody sort of knows who you are because everybody knows everybody, and wanting to also leave that town and make your parents proud. And a part of where I am in corporate America and the way I bring sort of my own unique background to the role is all due to my growing up in that way.
Describe your parents for me.
They're traditional sort of Pakistani parents that are extraordinarily strict, expect a lot. I put a lot of pressure on myself still with my parents in the back of my head, sort of saying, nose to the grindstone, no ego comes first, superstars shine if they work really hard, respect people around you. That's huge. And I think a lot of what they've taught me has, in good and bad ways, sort of carried me forward into the role that I have now. Good, because I think people find I have a good EQ, IQ balance. Bad, because I'm constantly striving to do more. Nothing is good enough. I'm always looking for the next thing. And I extend myself a lot because I want to do better and I want to make people proud.
You're such a bar raiser.
I am.
Boom, boom. Always thinking like, what's better? What else could we be doing? Which leads me to my next question, which is, you describe for me when I say transformational thinking, like, how do you define it?
I really just think it's about living and breathing. I mean, it's not set it and forget it mode. It's about having living and breathing thoughts around the way you want to make a change. As simple as I want to inspire the people that report into me, or I have a massive project and I have to make this work. It's about pivoting at the right times. It's about respecting other views. It's about bringing your own perspective to the situation, but listening to others. It's about being nimble enough to roll with the punches and say, what I did a year ago doesn't work anymore. And I have to be forward thinking enough to change it now. Facts and circumstances change, and so should we. So I think about transformational thinking a little literally, but also just soft skill wise. Again, I bring it back to, you can be the smartest person that went to like the best schools, has the pedigree and the credentials, but if you can't pivot from your perspective, if you can't listen to others speak, if you can't incorporate the way the world is changing around you, you can't be transformational.
Where do you struggle in that, particularly in this, let's just call it economic climate in the last couple of years? Where's that one place where you're like, ooh, that's something I'm working on?
Yeah. And it honestly, it's less of the economic climate. And I think it's more about people who have been working in the organization that I work with for a very long time have trouble with transformational thinking. They are used to a certain cohort of individuals with them that buy into the same thoughts all the time, and they don't want to change. Change is uncomfortable. Even right now, if I want to bring it back to economics, we're seeing the lowest trading levels we've ever seen because people are scared to make a change. They're too nervous with the volatility, the macro geopolitical sort of cloud that's over the world right now. Everybody's sort of in standstill mode. And some may argue right now is the time to move. And it's hard to get an old guard that is very entrenched in sort of the organization to think transformationally. And soon, after a couple years here, I may also become one of those people that cannot see the perspective on the outside. So my goal is to continuously push myself to say, are you doing what you were doing like a year ago or 2 years ago? Or are you forcing yourself to think about things a little differently?
Right. And is somebody a witness to that and calling that out for you? Or is that just something that you know about yourself? You know where you are at all times?
I know I have to know about it about myself, and I have to push myself to do it because unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, there's pros and cons to it. Our organization has a lot of people who have been here for 20 years plus. It's a wonderful thing about where I work, but it is a difficult thing to change minds in that way. And they're not going to point it out for you that you should be moving sort of the needle in a way. You have to see that the needle hasn't been moved for a really long time and it's time to pivot.
Yeah. How did you know that this idea of being a transformational thinker was a part of your leadership brand? Did you have a moment or an experience where someone said it to you and you're like, yeah, I got that? Or were you surprised?
I am constantly surprised by positive feedback. It's like a con. It's a con to the way I grew up.
Okay.
I am, and I'll bring it back to that place for a minute just to say the incredibly humble part of who I am makes it very hard for me to accept that I have a positive quality. I'm honored that people think I'm a transformational thinker. I'm honored that my team loves to work with me. I'm honored that senior level management gives me a lot of sort of feedback on how well I pivot, move, transform the way we think about, as a CCO and regulatory attorney, think about regulation, think about policy change, think about risk. But I am not good at sort of knowing that I've just made a really positive impact. That's sort of probably what drives me to continue to keep doing it in hopes that one day it'll click that I did it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So it's almost like, how do you acknowledge those places where you've had progress and accomplishment? That's something that you're working on.
A lot.
Like, wow, I did that. That was good.
Yeah, that's very hard for me. That's very, very hard for me. And it's a part of what drives me, but I have trouble accepting that I've done well.
Okay. That is so cool. That is so cool that you're sharing that. The other thing that I was thinking about is, how do you get yourself into a place? So let's bring it into very tactical situational experience right now. How do you get yourself into a place where you need to ignite this in others? And you can see that maybe that this is not a part of their ethos, but you need to ignite it. You've got to somehow empower them to adopt this. Walk us through how you do that.
For the people that report into me and who I manage, I am very purposeful in creating a safe space for them to shadow me. I do believe that some of this is a little contagious, meaning if they see me speak up in a meeting, if they see me sort of shift away from what the norm is, watching the way that I do it in the most sort of respectful and soft manner I can is contagious. And I'm already starting actually to see the difference in people thinking outside the box, trying to raise a point that might not have been raised and is a little more esoteric and uncomfortable. That has started working with the people that report into me. It is very hard to do that with sort of senior level management that has been here for a very long time. I think the way that they've started noticing that I am transformational is that I don't have an issue with pushing the boundaries of what we're going to do. I might not think I'm right, but I'm okay saying it. So that there's a piece of me that will always say, you're probably not right, but you should give it a whirl. There's something that keeps pushing me to try. But I do have sort of this, in the same manner in which I sort of can't take positive feedback, I sort of have this constant nervosa around, are you getting it right? Did you just say something that will flop? What if we push the firm in a direction it shouldn't be going? Is there some reason why people aren't changing and being transformational because they have it right and I have it wrong? Like that happens a lot, but I don't ever quell sort of my feelings and my speech when I'm speaking to senior management because clearly something's working somewhere.
Yeah, I love that. What about the barriers to transformation? Because when I think about the genesis of even bringing a conversation like this to life is I see lots and lots of organizations that obviously are very driven by profitability and revenues, which is not wrong. However, the organization needs to really evolve, grow, expand to meet those financial goals and expectations. And the organization itself doesn't quite know how to do that. And there's lots and lots of barriers. I see people, I see situations, I see cultural. But from your standpoint, what do you think some of the barriers are?
The number one barrier is people not having external perspective. The people, and I honestly believe, and it's perspective across diversity of thought. It's perspective around diversity of risk. It's perspective around diversity of what options are even on the table. I mean, if you haven't experienced anything other than the organization you're working at, you get into like tunnel vision. And again, I go back to the fact that at the organization I'm at, the average vintage here is like 15 to 25 years. So if you're not forcing yourself to sort of hire new people, hire diverse people, hire people with a variety of experiences behind them, you never get that sort of percolation of idea generation and thinking outside the box and moving things forward that may feel uncomfortable because you've never experienced it. So me as a more sort of new joiner, I'll say, but I'm more than 5 years here, under 6, makes it difficult because I am still the fresh perspective, and I have still been here for close to 6 years. So if you don't continuously force yourself to find that perspective somehow, we'll just be in like drinking the Kool-Aid mode.
Yeah. And sometimes it's easier to just do it the way we've always done it, and especially on days where you're feeling tired or you feel like you're constantly pushing a rock up a hill. And it's just like, I'm not into that right now. It's just so much easier to carry on this way.
It is. It's way easier. And when I find myself in set it and forget it mode, like when I'm pushing like the easy button, I stop myself. It's very rare, to be honest. I mean, I don't have that in me to do it. But if I find myself sort of agreeing with the norm, I think, am I doing this because it's the right thing to do? Or am I doing this because I cannot take the time to think of something a little more thoughtfully or from a diverse perspective? Or have I pinged all the people I really should in order to get this done properly for our business? That's a constant question in my head.
There's like a thoroughness to what you just said.
You have to.
Do you think someone can learn this way of being?
I think a part of it is in you. I think there's people that have a really good blend of wanting to move the needle and make change in a way that pushes the boundaries of what the norm is. I think that's something that's in you. Some of it comes from just sheer like hard work. Like you just have the ethics to get it done. Some of it is a true EQ IQ blend that forces your IQ to sort of be a little bit more emotional and bringing in like that, better, faster, stronger thoughts around, it's not just about the textbook. It's about like, how do you work with people? How do you bring them in for new ideas? There's a resistance there if you're heavy sort of, I think, IQ, academic, technical skills. But I think you can push people through example to think outside the box. I don't think it comes naturally for everyone. And I think you can't teach it. You can't teach like that core sort of ethic or moral that you have in you.
Is there a story that comes to mind where that really illuminates your point? Maybe it was an example that you put out there that all of a sudden it caught on and they were like, oh yeah, that works for me.
Yeah. I mean, a part of it is the way that I came in from a hedge fund. It was very difficult. I mean, you have to be open-minded. You have to sort of let risk take over sometimes and say, I'm allowing this, even though it makes me feel a little uncomfortable. I sit in a role that is, rooted in regulation, and there's very precise policy and procedure. There's very like legally right and wrong answers to everything, but there's buoys of reasonability you can kind of like swim between, and that gray area is where a lot of attorneys don't like to play. They sort of. They kind of want to make it a little easier for themselves and create black and white rules. You can't do that at a hedge fund. And I brought that perspective to Lazard, and it threw people like for a loop. I mean, it just threw them for a loop. They were like, wait, there's ways to come from a place of yes, but we're going to do it in this way that has bounds of reason around it. And it sort of created this style at Lazard where now people are much more forthcoming to legal and compliance, because they're like, they'll come from a place of yes, but there's a couple things we're going to add to make sure that we're within like the bounds of reason. And because so many people have been at this firm for so long, and the set it and forget it mode has kicked in, there was a tendency to say no. And you never want your legal and compliance team to be on the outskirts of the decision-making process. They should be partners with the business, so that when you do say no, everybody knows you really mean it. And it's not just like, no, all the time. So that is like a skill that is transformational thinking for an attorney. But it's also transformational for the business. It makes people want to come to you because you're willing to play ball. And that's not one example. It's sort of just a gift I got from the hedge fund. I wouldn't have been able to function if I said no. They would have gone right around me.
And what I love about that is very often in organizations, your function would be considered like the sales prevention team.
Yes.
Because it's very narrow.
The business prevention unit, the BPU. Yeah, it's like a thing. And I choose to listen to the business, find commercially reasonable answers that make the business grow and keep us safe. Like that's how this should work. It should be a symbiotic relationship where we kind of like mesh. And then when I do say no, people say, wow, Nargis said no. She probably couldn't find a reasonable solution to this. And that no means no.
That's right.
And they won't forum shop me and go someplace else.
Yeah. That to me is like one of the strongest tenets of your brand.
It really has become one of the strongest tenets of my brand, for sure.
The other thing that you talked about is this idea that transformational thinking is contagious when there is no ego involved. Please say more.
I have found myself in many situations in my role where out of just sort of personal principles, the answer is we are not doing it your way. And I believe that it comes from a place of control and ego. It's simply, I've never done it this way. It's making me uncomfortable. I have a script for this and I am not going off script. And I choose to cut. And if I had an ego, my answer to like rolling in that gray area and trying to find what is the right thing within the buoys of like reasonability, I would say, no, that makes me feel uncomfortable. And the answer is no, the law says this. And I would be like the no. Because I don't have an ego, I'm willing to sit and listen and try to like mesh to like maybe diametrically opposed things together and make it work. But it's very hard to change the decision of somebody who is not willing to listen because they have an ego about the principle they're trying to prove.
Yeah.
I also think about ego in the way that no task is too small. No, nothing my team does is something I shouldn't sit there and do with them if I need to. I will do things with the CEO and I'll do things with the most junior associate at the firm. It doesn't matter that I'm a C-level. Everybody deserves time, respect, and the contagion that comes along with watching somebody pick up things really, really tiny off the floor, but also like change the macro environment of the firm shows something to people. It's like I'm willing to play ball in any scenario for anything, for anyone. And this isn't about having a personal agenda or a personal principle I'm trying to prove. This is about sharing the work, doing better, and coming up with like the right response. So it's ego in sort of like two ways. It's like you can't change it's very hard to change people's mind if they have an ego about it. They on principle they won't. But it's also important to show people at the firm you're willing to do it all. There's no like bouginess about like, me and my job and what I'm willing to pick up.
What about people that have really influenced you in your life to think more expansively and align with that way of being? Who comes to mind?
The first person who ever gave me a chance in this industry was my first boss. And he was incredible at doing this. It was like Jedi mind tricks in every meeting that he would do, where he would be like, I totally hear you and I think you're on the right path, but I have two things that I think you should change. And they'd be really big things, but he would say it in such a way that it didn't feel so, it didn't feel like you were perverting somebody's original idea. That I have like kind of glommed on to doing that as in every point of my career. It's like, great idea, love it. Even if I'm like, that is not a great idea, love it. There's two things that we can do to make this better, safer, stronger, and we'll like future proof, right? Like this will stand the test of time. We're in a safe spot. And you just, the way you say it is so important that you don't feel like you're perverting what they're saying. You're just offering like 2 Lego pieces or 3 Lego pieces that click in really easily that make this all so much better. So it's not saying I don't like your idea, that doesn't work for me. It's how do we change your idea ever so slightly, which might actually be pretty material, to just make this right. That's a gift that has taken me a very long time to learn, but he taught me that. The other is just like, again, going back to the way I grew up, it's just like sheer brute force hard work. Like hard work shines, you know, getting things done on time, being respectful of people's wishes and wants, moving the business forward quickly, efficiently, and with, you know, grace and sort of respect for everybody is so important to me that, you know, I don't know that you learn that, but it's been bestowed upon me by my parents. And it clicks for me.
I love the visual of Legos. That's a good one.
I do it all the time. I'm always like, there's just like this one like little Tetris piece that would like make this fit really well. And I do that all the time. And they're usually very material, but I'm not like ruining the structure. I'm just like adding on like a chunk of like my own thinking on top.
Right.
That makes it kind of a little bit more of my own without perverting like the core structure.
So how do you stay fresh and current and aligned to this way of being? Are you like a voracious reader? Are you a meditator? Like what is it that you're doing that's staying aligned to this way of being?
In my role, well, 1 and 2 as an attorney, you sort of you have continuing education. You have to do it. I choose continuing education that roots very closely to my career in finance. And I very much learn by listening from the people around me. I mean, I could not have learned this complicated business without sort of, again, humbling myself and saying, you don't know, and you have to listen and you have to learn, and you will root yourself into every piece of this business till you understand it. That's done me well. And that's done me sort of not so well. I mean, it's done me well in that, you know, I've become sort of a subject matter expert on a lot of different things. It's done me not so well that now that you're a subject matter on a lot of different things, you get pulled into a lot of things, and they may or may not be like very related to your core job and function. But taking the time to learn it all is a gift. I mean, and again, people either want to put in that work or they don't. You know, I think that's important, but I also, you know, I'm not a voracious reader. I don't read one thing outside of work because I'm reading all day. I make things easier for myself. I mean, my web page when I log in is the Securities and Exchange Commission's webpage. So I know every single thing they're doing every day that's on their agenda, because their agenda is my agenda. So I try to do things that make things easier for myself, but I'm not a voracious reader. I want things to be easy. I sort of, you know, easy, palatable, like consumable data points are like my way of understanding how things work, as opposed to reading. And that sort of is weird as an attorney, but instead of reading pages and pages of a rule, I like to be efficient, think quick, like come up with solutions fast. Like that's important to me.
Last question. What are you trying? So we talked a little bit about this idea of the self-acknowledgement and appreciating your progress and different things that you're doing. Tell us what you're working on for yourself going into the last bit of 2023 and into 2024. What is Nargis trying to get better at, grow bigger in, review, whatever it is? What does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been approached multiple times to expand my thinking around CCO and regulatory attorney to business acumen. my ability to understand every piece of the business that I was just speaking about has turned into people realizing that maybe there's a core competency there we're not tapping into. So I'm really thinking about, together with senior people at the firm, what can I do to add value in ways that is not my core competency? That scares me a lot. I will fail at some things doing that. That journey is scary. And I've been told, we're going to give you some projects that you will fail at, but we want to see you stumble, because you stumbling is learning. I don't like doing that. I like to be good at what I do. And the
how are you going to ready yourself for that? Like, what are you going to do?
I'm scared. I'm not ready. I mean, I literally, the 3 projects that I have in front of me right now that I am choosing from and must decide by next week, literally, this is all real. I am petrified to do any one of them. They're not my core skill set. They're true business acumen projects. They are things that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole if you told me to, and I had $1 million at the end of it. I mean, there are things that I could royally screw up, but if I don't take this chance, I'm not learning, growing, pushing myself, and I'm not making senior management proud. I mean, if this is what they want to see out of me, you say yes, and that is who I am. Like, I don't say no. I won't say no to something that someone is like offering me.
Well, Nargis, thank you for offering all of your insights, your heart, your amazing stories, your energy. Like, you have such conviction and passion around this. It's like, it's very palpable. And it's no surprise to me that you're just on an amazing ride right now. So can't wait to see and hear firsthand how this is all going to play out for you.
I'm looking forward to it. We'll see. And I so appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeannie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.